It's Joe Pardavila, and you're listening to the Forbes Books podcast. And branded entertainment is nothing new. In the 1930s, Procter & Gamble produced and sponsored the first soap operas in radio and then television. Branded entertainment has been defined as the insertion of a brand within an entertainment property in such a way that the line between entertainment and advertising becomes blurred. It's a whole lot easier said than done, but my guest this week has discovered the secret sauce. He is Patrick Hughes, the CEO of Foundation Media, and his company's work with Build-A-Bear, Sony, Netflix, and others has provided a model for success in how brands can interact with the entertainment industry. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
So, Patrick, you've done something that I feel is the holy grail in business marketing, and that is fusing branded content with actual entertainment. Everyone is trying to do this right now because the old days of buying ads and then the newer age of buying ads on Google and such, those are a thing of the past. So now everyone's trying to get their branded content into the entertainment space. When did you realize that that was going to be the it factor for you at Foundation?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, ever since I saw Willy Wonka, I was inspired because I thought that was really the beginning of brands fully incorporating themselves into a narrative, into narrative storytelling in a way that wasn't disruptive to the story.
Right.
And I think that as we started to think about that, a brand is no different than a major piece of IP, that's out there that people know. The trick was trying to convince the market that, the brand wasn't, the intention wasn't advertising. Because if a brand has the intention of marketing a particular product or, trying to push an agenda in the entertainment space, it's going to quickly kind of blow up in their face. So it doesn't work for everybody, and I think the brands that we've had the pleasure of working with, it's because they lead with story and they have something that's part of their foundation that's story based. So in other words, you can't just take a company that's out in the marketplace and say, well, we're going to incorporate them into a feature film right. And nobody's going to notice.
Right. Like James Bond drinking Heineken. Yeah, sure he would.
Right. Exactly. Well, so it's finding the right brands with because disrupting story is always going to be a problem. It's like when Ed Sheeran popped up in Game of Thrones, and everybody's like, well, what is going on here? It's the same sort of thing. You want to keep people kind of locked into story and character. And, that's the trick with brands in Hollywood.
And that is a very fine line. You kind of insinuated a little bit of you just can't just throw a product in there because people see right through it. What is to use an overused business terminology, what's the secret sauce to making that work?
It's story. It's always story. I'm a film geek, always have been. I'm like I was a kind of a chubby kid that like was obsessed with films. Older brother, older sister, so kind of kept myself interested in film and TV all the time, and just submersed myself into that world. So it was always like, then I was a late bloomer, high school, but. But it's always story. So I think that if a brand or if a piece of material is anchored in character and story, it's going to do well regardless of where it comes from. That's the key.
And have you had, in your experience, had clients come up to be like, hey, we want to do this, and you're like, oh my God, that is the worst thing in the world. Like, how do you, what's the nuanced approach to dealing with folks who just don't get that idea of story? They just want to get their brand somewhere in a movie or TV show?
Every day. Every day somebody at the company or, one of our partners or somebody we're affiliated with will come up and, it's not just incorporating a bad idea into and trying to turn that into a film or TV show, but like you just said, it could be a brand saying, we have an upcoming product and this is how we want to get this into the film and TV space. And we just say it's not going to work. Because the minute we start cutting corners on story and being creative is the minute we lose the market's trust. So that's something that we're very careful with and conscious of as we move forward.
And one of the brands that you had a lot of success with a mutual friend of ours, Sharon John, the CEO of Build-A-Bear. Can you talk about how that relationship started and what you're currently working on with them?
Sharon John inspires me every day because Sharon is an incredible CEO, and she has this business mind that I'm impressed with and I learn from. But also, she's like this great storyteller because she comes from marketing and she's worked with so many great brands, kind of leading up to being the CEO of Build-A-Bear. And Sharon and I just connected on story, but it was wild because I was actually working on a project that was a direct competition with Build-A-Bear. It was a concept that was like build, fill in the blank, build your own whatever.
Right.
And our business plan was don't contact Build-A-Bear. And so I would walk around the office and we would say, this is top secret. We were using the Build-A-Bear, window designs as our template. And we said, we're just going to not talk to them. And then I was watching TV with my wife and I saw Sharon's Undercover Boss episode. And I looked at her and I said, this person is inspiring. And I said, I have to meet with her. And I went into the office the next day and I told the guy who's now the CEO of the company, Harvey Russell, I said, we have to get in touch with Sharon. And we had a dinner with Sharon in LA a couple weeks later and just spent 3-4 hours talking about ideas and creativity and what Build-A-Bear was and could be in the film and TV space, and never looked back.
Wow. And can you talk about some of the things you're able to, because let's circle back to sort of our original part of the conversation, talking about fitting branded content into story. What were some of the first steps to do that when it came to Build-A-Bear? Because, for folks not familiar, Build-A-Bear is a store you go in and you would build a bear. So what's the story there?
Well, I think Build-A-Bear naturally lends itself to, it's anchored in IP. I think one of the things that Sharon did was create backstory to all these characters that millions of kids spend time with every day. So without taking that creativity away from them, I think that's key. It's like if you go into a Build-A-Bear and you pick up a honey girl, most people know the backstory of the honey girls because Sharon and the team created this platform where people go, okay, this is a music singing group that hides their identity from the public. People know that backstory, and then they take the characters and they create their own adventures with them. So naturally, that IP, just like a comic book or a G.I. Joe or whatever, lends itself to film, television, book, other content. The trick was then going into the marketplace and saying, hey, market, this is just great IP. Just there's no difference than a Build-A-Bear product in a G.I. Joe or a Transformer or whatever, right? So for us, we saw a world of opportunity within the store. And then we also saw it as a driver. I always tell people that Build-A-Bear Entertainment as a whole is just a feeling that you get. It's like if you watch a movie, a Build-A-Bear Entertainment product could be a romantic comedy. It could be anything that Touchstone did in the past. It's just a feeling where you can kind of surrender yourself to knowing you're getting good content that you can trust to watch with the whole family. That was the idea, and that's what we've been trying to do.
And you use the phrase IP, which folks not in the show business field will know as intellectual property, and that's a big driver in entertainment these days. Unless there's some recognizable IP, most studios want nothing to do with you. What do you say in terms of the current state of entertainment and this sort of relentless pursuit of just exploiting all IP?
That's a good question. I think the entertainment business is bogged down a little bit in IP. I think that sometimes we underestimate the fact that there's a whole audience out there that just because we're 30, 40, whatever, and we've kind of experienced everything in entertainment. There's a whole audience that hasn't, that still wants new content just because we liked a turtle, and I'm not saying anything bad about it. I'm a huge fan. I hope they make Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles till the end of time. But I'm just, sometimes we underestimate the fact that a new audience may want something original that's not kind of fully out there. So we try to find a balance between something that people are familiar with and then also a new spin on it that can appeal to, an evolving audience and just people in general and what the world is today. So I think it doesn't matter who you talk to. It's always, hey, let's take our existing libraries and try to expand on them, or let's, go out there and find something that's already kind of blown up in the market and turn it into a film. But a lot of times that backfires too. You'll go out there and you'll do something with a YA novel or something, and that people are so familiar with and love, and then they've made it their own. And then when you turn it into a film or TV series, they go, well, wait, this isn't what I've lived with for the last 6 months, or a year or whatever it's been. So, but the entertainment business is that way. I think companies like Netflix have brought back the movies that we've kind of loved and grew up with and things. And I think there's a trend moving in that direction, but it's definitely changed.
So how do you sell original IP, I guess, is at the end of the day, what companies will probably have to answer to is like, hey, listen, all right, we've milked all the IP we got here in the store. What do we do next? So when it comes to you and your team at Foundation creating original IP, what are some of those first steps look like?
We normally, when we're creating original IP, we try to align that IP with some other driver, something that is going to enhance whatever that IP is and still get a different engine in the marketplace. So, for example, if Honey Girls, I think, would have been a great standalone film, but the fact that it was tied to a best-selling toy line at Build-A-Bear definitely gave the market a little bit more confidence. So sometimes, like, for example, we're doing a project right now with a lot of great artists that are kind of well-known individually, and when I say artists, I mean like, these are like street artists and things like that. They've never done anything in the film and TV space, but they have these big followings, out there in their worlds. So what we try to do is paint a picture to the buyer market that, hey, look, these guys have this amazing following in all these different areas. When we put them all together, we're going to drive eyeballs, because right now that's a big part of the industry that you have to make sure you're checking that box, which is, if a movie is not going to go theatrically, if there's, no DVD market that exists, you really only get that one shot. You need eyeballs to go to a streamer or to an on-demand or whatever the case may be. So it's getting that first big explosion that's going to help, and helping the buyer see that, right, is what's going to help move it forward.
And it seems like a big part of your career has been knowing the importance of partnerships. Going back to your relationship with Sharon at Build-A-Bear and these other deals you've got with Netflix, and you've partnered with the Blueprint Group. So when did you realize how important you couldn't do this by yourself, and partnerships were a big part of what you were going to do?
So I'm kind of a reformed manager type, and I think that's and when I say that, I mean the industry has changed in that sense too, where agents are wearing different hats, managers are wearing different hats. It's a different landscape where you kind of have to do everything. It's like the person that comes to your house knows how to fix a light bulb now has to know how to frame a house, kind of thing. You have to learn all these different jobs and positions. You have to be a marketer. You have to do all this, right? That entertainment companies today. So just with me, it became a natural thing. Like my first kind of quote unquote partner was the guy named Brian Riley, who was also a mentor of mine, who taught me that. He said, look, it takes a village to get a movie made. Brian was Tim Allen's, producer and had the Santa Claus franchise. He told me a couple of things. He said, hey, you need to find a franchise, because that's the key to survival in Hollywood. And he also said, don't be afraid of taking on partners. And, he said, because the more like-minded people that are solving problems, especially when it comes to creativity, the better. So we've just been blessed with best-in-class partners in every area, including Blueprint.
And let's talk about some of the successes here. You were part of the animation adaptation of The Bad Guys, which raked in some big bucks, nearly 300 million worldwide. Can you take us back to the beginning of that, how that came together, and did you know it would be this successful?
So yeah, well, I think anybody who knows Aaron Blabey is inspired by Aaron. I think that, yeah, I knew, and it's crazy to say that, but we knew from the beginning Bad Guys was going to be a hit. When we started working with Aaron, things were really starting to take off with him. He wasn't taking calls from Hollywood. He didn't really care. I mean, Aaron's like one of the greatest guys you'll ever meet. I mean, he's truly just about content and his work. So I wrote him a 8-page letter, something like that, and sent him an email. A couple months went by, I didn't hear back. Finally, I just told him how passionate I was about his work. And finally he responded, and he said, well, do you think that there's a chance to do something with this in Hollywood? He said, because I look at my material, the way I approach every book is I think about it from a film, or television show first. And I said, yeah, I think there's a real shot here. So we brought Aaron over, and he had never been to LA. And and when he got off the plane, Harvey, who I mentioned earlier, picked him up from the airport, and he said, man, thank God you're real. He said, I thought I was being punked. He said, I get this call, I get this letter from this crazy guy. And that week we were with every studio head pitching, Bad Guys. And the response was, this is sold a couple of units, but it hasn't been it wasn't a major success yet in the US. But we found an amazing partner in DreamWorks. Damon Ross shepherded this thing, believed in it from the first day. And I don't think any of us ever thought it wasn't going to be successful. So the fact that, it came out and really marked the first original title in animation to come out in a long time, and it performed the way it did was really fulfilling and magical. So even though we thought it was going to be successful, there's always that chance that an original title doesn't cut through, but it was, it felt really great. And Aaron has since sold, he has almost 40 million books in print over the last 5 years.
That's awesome. That's so cool. And what's amazing, people don't realize in the world of animation how expensive these films are to make. I mean, your average Pixar movie costs around $200 million to produce, and obviously they make $1 billion on a movie, so it's pretty profitable. But somehow you guys were able to make the Bad Guys for under 100, and so doubled your investment. What's the future in terms of keeping these costs down on these films? Because obviously the shelf life in the movie theater is not what it used to be. Now movies are going from the theaters to home use in less than 30 days. It's not like they've been in theaters for a few months. So being able to make a lot of money fast was super important. But sometimes you can make a lot of money fast, but if you have a huge budget, it doesn't matter how much money you're making at the onset. So how are you guys able to keep all that in check and then make a profitable project?
I think with animation is tough because it takes so long. Like Bad Guys, I'm trying to think of when Bad Guys was sold, but it was like a 4-year process. And with animation, it's a lot of writing and rewriting. So it's different than making a live action film. When you make a live action film, you go out there, and when you're there, I mean, granted, you're making changes on set and things like that, but once you're committed, you're kind of committed. With animation, until you're locked, things are being changed, segments are being reconfigured. So it's the time that makes the cost what it is, Yeah. It's, and then of course, when you have challenges like with the world in the state that it was in, you couldn't record actors in the way that you normally could. But again, I think part of keeping the cost down was how great the kind of team was at DreamWorks. And I think Aaron getting back to them, quickly when it came to the creative stuff and just keeping a really tight team together, I think is what was successful there. I think going forward, and a lot of the stuff that we're doing, we're working with animation houses that are cutting the time that's needed for animation. So you can start watching this stuff in real time as
like
you're
dailies,
making it.
Right?
Yeah, exactly. So you're getting like real time eyeballs on it, and the delays that kind of existed even a year ago are starting to change. We're working with an amazing company that's best in class for visual effects. And I think what they're doing now is they're making animated movies for, I don't know if it's half the time, but let's just, I would probably assume it's going to be half the time of what a regular animation film is. And I can't even imagine what that's going to do for cost. Yeah. But I think it's going to drive them down exponentially.
So what is, like, how would you describe Foundation Media to folks? Like, if your elevator pitch, because you're sort of like a studio, but you're also like consultants. Like, what is Foundation Media? Like, if you were to run into someone on the street, because it's a lot more complicated than you let it on to be.
Yeah, we're still figuring that out. Okay. That's, I think that's the answer. I mean, in the conversations we have with people, I think we found a pretty solid niche in family entertainment. So I would, and I've said this to people, I would say that pound for pound, I think that we are the best company in the world when it comes to family content. I think that with big buckets of business that we're in, like the Aaron Blabey business, the Build-A-Bear business, a couple of the other major categories of business that we're in that space, I would say that if there's an animated project, we have a pretty good handle on that. If there's something that fits in the family entertainment space as a whole, I think we have a really good handle on that. I think over the next couple months, you're going to see some big announcements from the Foundation and Blueprint side that are all best-in-class content projects that are all major films. And I think that over the past couple years, it's really been developing the brand in that way. So if we come out with if we talk about a book with somebody, if we talk about an animated project with somebody, they can trust that project is going to move forward and it's going to be good. So I think we're really great there. I think Blueprint as a whole is the best company in the world in the music space. I think that those guys like Gene Nelson and Dwayne Williams and G. Roberson, no surprise that they've been at in the driver's seat for the past 20 years when it's come to all pop culture and everything music, from their early days G had with Kanye to, you name it, these guys have been a part of it. So it wasn't a fluke. So to work with guys like that, how do you find the right content for artists? How do you, where it's, again, it's just like a brand. It's like, just because you're a singer and just because you sell out arenas doesn't mean that you can go star in a film. Right. And that film is going to be a hit. So it's finding the right artist that can connect to material that we know, is not going to be a distraction, but is going to enhance the creative process. So I think we're amazing in those areas. I think in us on the brand side, we've proven with Build-A-Bear and with some of our other partners in that space that, we know how to create an entertainment footprint for the right brands and for the right partners. So I think we're best in class when it comes to that. And I've seen our model. I've seen people try to duplicate our model time and time again. And in fact, I had an amazing call with, don't name it. Yeah. Yeah. But just, and he was shocked at the business model that we created and was wondering how they had spent tens of millions of dollars creating the same format that we have. Wow. And that was a pretty big moment to hear this person say that. And now you took the words right out of my mouth. What kind of competition is in this nebulous company that you are? I mean, you mentioned one. Are there a lot of folks trying to do what you're doing now? I think people try to do what we're doing. I don't think that they're going to be as successful doing it. I mean, the problem is it's the human factor. Foundation is made up of a lot of great people. So, and Blueprint is made up of a lot of great people. And I think those people have different stories that kind of led us all together. And sometimes a lot of us are renegades in the entertainment business. Like Jason Weiss was at MGM as an executive, for a long time. So he understands the studio system. Jennifer Sawala is in the, radio system and has worked with iHeart for, her career. And I think Darcy Price and Bill Pearlman are like the best talent people in the world, I would say, because their clients are out there, competing with major agencies and bigger management companies and all this stuff all the time. But it's the care and attention that they put into the people that they work with that makes the difference. Mm-hmm. So I think that Foundation as a whole, one thing we do really well is we all come together and we work as partners, and we don't have an environment that is competitive. Because I've seen it. I've worked in and I've run and been a part of companies where competition is a big thing. It's big in Hollywood. It's big, no matter what people are being paid on the talent or lit side or anything else, there's the entertainment brings a competitive nature amongst colleagues that we didn't want here. So every time that we talk about a project, or every time that we talk about a client or whatever it is, we truly get behind them as partners and as a team. And I think that's what's made the difference.
That's awesome. Looking you up before we chatted, I noticed your first actual credit was playing yourself on an episode of The Real Housewives of Orange County. You've come a long way since then.
Well, so, I used to represent Scott Dunlop, the guy who created the show. And I had this crazy idea and I went to Scott during, what was it, season 1 or season 2? And I said, hey, I'm making a movie with MGM. We're doing this movie called Picture This. And I said, I want to cast one of the stars of the show in the film. And so I had this crazy idea of putting myself in the show, which was probably the biggest mistake in my life. I came across wrong. But for me, I went to eat with my wife like the day after the show aired, and I quickly realized it went immediately to my head. I thought everybody recognized me. I thought I was famous. I thought I was like a big star. And my wife's like, nobody notices you. Nobody cares. Just eat your burrito. And then I realized right then that was not for me. But I was fortunate enough to be early Housewives. This guy, Rick Freeberg, directed a lot of the early episodes. He was my client and was best friends with Scott at the time. And, I've been able to see that turn into what it's become. And it's been awesome.
That's awesome. Well, Patrick, like I said, you've come a long way since being a bit of a dick on The Real Housewives, but I think you guys are on the right track, and I cannot wait to see what's coming next, because I feel like you're a guy that you always got something cooking, right? There's always something in the oven in Patrick Hughes' kitchen, right?
I hope so, because I like to eat.
His name is Patrick Hughes. He's Foundation Media's CEO. Patrick, thanks so much for the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. And to find out more about Patrick and his team, check out foundationmgmt.com. And that's it for this episode of the Forbes Books Podcast. If you enjoyed the show, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left us a review so more amazing entrepreneurs like yourself can discover the show. And please, don't forget the golden rule and treat others as you want to be treated. Thanks for listening. Until next time, adios.